Now, the European Union is teaming up with port operators to combat increasing illegal drug trafficking. There have been huge increases in the amount of cocaine entering the continent through ports in Belgium and the Netherlands in recent years. And that has prompted the EU to start a new project to fight back against the drug smugglers. DW's Jack Parrott reports now from one of Europe's largest ports, the port of Antwerp in Belgium.
These might look like the sleepy waterways of Europe's shipping trade, but Antwerp port has become a hotbed of some of the world's most lucrative criminal activity. Pressure has been steadily ramping up on European politicians to act to tackle the drug gangs operating here.
We are joining forces here today because it takes a network to fight a network. That's why here today we launched the European Ports Alliance. Successes against criminals in one port alone will only mean criminals move to other ports.
Criminals have reportedly been handing out hundreds of thousands of euros in bribes to port workers and threatening them and their families to gain access to shipments. The Dutch port of Rotterdam is another key focus of the project. Scores of people have been shot or bombed in drug gang violence in Belgium, the Netherlands, and across the European Union in recent years, including the murders of famous investigators and lawyers, as well as innocent children caught in the crossfire.
Customs officials here in Antwerp seized 116,000 kilos of cocaine last year, coming in on ships from all over the world. It was another new yearly record for the port. And bear in mind, that's just what's being seized, not what's getting past the customs officials.
The gangs are bringing the drugs in from Latin America, mainly Ecuador and Colombia. The Port Alliance comprises of European politicians, port masters, shipping companies and security firms.
When human lives are considered being just a tool in a lucrative yet detrimental business, should we be surprised that the level of violence is surpassing the images of mafia-type series? And thus, the stronger the headwind, the more creative, collaborative, bold and supportive we need to be.
The European Port Alliance project is about increasing cooperation between Europe's national customs and law enforcement authorities. It wants to use technology like container scanners to boost security, but officials won't make too many details public in order to prevent criminals from being informed of the plans. The task ahead is titanic, but European officials know this fight requires more than just a nudge.
And DW's Jack Parrott, who filed that report, joins us now from Brussels. Hi, Jack. Good to see you. Tell us who exactly is involved in this new EU port task force and how exactly it's meant to work.
So there are over 15 ports, from the port of Varna, for instance, Hamburg, Helsingborg, and all over the European Union. They all turned up in Antwerp to have this discussion, as well as the associations of ship brokers and other ship associations, including the terminal operators, where a lot of the pressure lies on them. What we've seen in recent years, especially in the last decade or so, is a huge increase in technology, which means that many more containers can quickly be scanned off cargo ships and moved out of the port area and then sent all over the European Union. It has increased cargo quantities that are moving through ports, but that obviously means that there's then a decrease in the checks that are happening, somewhere in the region of only 2 to 10% of all cargo containers are scanned when they enter the European Union for what is in them. And that has allowed essentially a thriving criminal network of drug smugglers to get drugs into the European Union on these containers. As we heard in the report, the concern from the European side is that what happens is if one port manages to sort of crack down on that business, that the drug gangs are now so well coordinated amongst themselves that they simply just send the containers into other ports. And the European Union, who's leading this initiative, appears to have managed to get these ports on side, get them together to try to collaborate to try and crack down on the cocaine that's entering the European Union.
Mm-hmm. So we've got very well-coordinated drug gangs who are also extremely violent, as we heard in your report. You know, this growing drug gang violence in Belgium, in the Netherlands. Can you tell us more about that? You know, how bad is it really now?
Yeah, anecdotally, I mean, it's very bad from the numbers. There's been over 500 explosions and shootings in the last couple of years related to this, and especially in port areas. Local Belgian media has been extensively reporting on the port of Antwerp. And essentially what they say is that what's happened is, as the technology has got better and there are more seizures, that the drug gangs, who ordinarily would sort of see a certain amount of seizures as part of the business of importing into the European Union, that those seizures are getting so high that they're now fighting back and trying to recapture the drugs that are seized by customs officials and take them back. And they're obviously using very serious force to do so. The port of Antwerp, and indeed the city of Antwerp, has seen a spill out of violence into the neighbourhoods, especially in the region around the port. And it's a huge concern for politicians, as it is in the Netherlands, as it is in other ports. And that's what we're starting to see, a desperate need to act. And that's what this Port Alliance is trying to do. There's no doubt that they know there's a tall order ahead of them. And they talked a lot about that when they were launching this Port Alliance. But they want to do more. They know that they need to collaborate, because citizens in this part of the world are not happy to see their ports used for huge amounts of drugs being smuggled into Europe.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. DW correspondent Jack Parrott in Brussels. Thanks so much, Jack.